good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear visitors, colleagues, blockchain fans, dear students, if any of you are already awake. On behalf of the Global Forum on Resilience here at Virginia Tech, it's my distinct pleasure to welcome you to an inaugural event of sorts, the Blacksburg Blockchain Symposium. I am David Bieri, and I'll be your host today. I do have a day job in which I'm the director of the Financial Resilience Lab at the Global Forum, and I also serve as a faculty member in the School of Public and International Affairs and in the Department of Economics at Virginia Tech. The Global Forum is the brainchild of Dr. Charles Steger, the VT President Emeritus, and it was set up roughly 3 years ago with the purpose of fostering conversations around a variety of notions of resilience, conversations amongst different kinds of stakeholders in the academy, in industry, and government. It's a type of conversation that we're trying to curate today. In our research in my group, we primarily focus on questions of monetary and financial resilience that evolve around the monetary financial system and how it's impacted by the constant evolutionary change that's affecting financial markets, its institutions, and ultimately the state. Today, we want to focus our attention on the blockchain, a key technological development that is set to fundamentally transform central elements of our economic life. It's perhaps only a mild exaggeration to suggest that in regards to its disruptive potential, the blockchain is on par with the invention of electricity, the telegraph, the internal combustion engine, and perhaps even the internet. For sure, blockchain technology has become almost synonymous with digital disruption, from land registries and trade finance to crypto assets such as Bitcoin. The rapidly proliferating applications of this technology have at once raised the promise and peril of what we theme here for the series today, the disruption of the trust business. Never before, really, in capitalism's remarkable 250-odd-year run, did technological progress almost instantaneously and so comprehensively promise to challenge old institutions that underpin the very system itself, from property rights to global value chains and, of course, money and credit. The blockchain is challenging how we think about trust, authority, in the context of economic governance. In fact, much of the history of capitalist development can be viewed through that lens of trust and authority. Whenever exchange-based approaches to generating trust have failed, think, for instance, the free banking era in the mid-1800s in the United States, a central authority, government, needed to step in to guarantee the functions. Think the creation of the Fed roughly 100 years ago. However, with the advent of blockchain technology, trust can now be achieved in a decentralized and distributed manner. There is thus an interesting need to address the economic, social, political implications of this technology. For the history of idea buffs in the audience, I've put up the most significant economic thinkers of the previous century to some. Their ideas are of such a resilient nature that they still provide, we will argue, a very informative lens through which to analyze something as contemporary as the blockchain. That is, of course, on the left, the Austrian economist Friedrich von Hayek, who believed that generating trust on a transactional basis was one of the key functions of markets. Hayek was also highly skeptical in government's ability to plan in a central way, aspects of modern economic life. On the opposing side, as it were, there is the British economist John Maynard Keynes, who gave us the idea that government could fine-tune the economy. In fact, last night at dinner, I just learned from Dan Larimer that Keynes's Bank Core plan, the precursor to the IMF's SDR currency basket, is also the inspiration for one of their companies, Block One's smart token applications that will run on their EOS.io platform later this June. So quite fascinating, really. So in an interesting twist, as it were, of intellectual history, Keynes sits once again at the very heart of the transformation of our financial system. So today we want to invite you to take part in a public dialogue that shows how relevant the Keynes-Hayek divide in thinking about the trust business still is. I'm thus thrilled that such a stellar array of colleagues, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and academics have followed our invitation to travel to Blacksburg and to discuss these emerging topics and their social implications here with us today. One of our central focuses of the discussion will be to explore the many regulatory challenges that the technology entails, perhaps in some ways even reconceptualizing how we think about what the resilience of our financial system really is all about. And so in that sense, the blockchain promises to revolutionize traditional understandings of money, authority, trust, and governance. And Blacksburg is an ideal place for engaging in such a conversation, for entertaining such provocations, as it were. Does the blockchain really provide us with more resilient alternatives to our existing institutions? How can regulators learn about this technology, about financial innovations in general, and also their risks? You know that Blacksburg, or many of you know, that Blacksburg is the home of Virginia Tech and the capital of the Hokie Nation. But Blacksburg also has a lesser known, perhaps, claim to fame, namely that it sits in some ways at the epicenter of the blockchain revolution, a story that goes as far back as the late 1970s when a handful of visionaries, crypto pioneers, some call them, with links to tech began to lay the groundwork of what eventually should evolve into the blockchain revolution today. And in that sense, we will want to dedicate the early afternoon panel to this locational genius that Blacksburg holds for this technology. Tech, as you know, has a fine engineering school, but we also have an active presence in the capital region, so that puts us in a relatively unique position to tap into what is arguably the world's most important regulatory circuit. But before I hand over the floor to our opening speakers, Dr. Charles Clancy, a colleague from Tech's Hume Center, I must address, of course, a number of housekeeping issues. Number one, we are being live streamed as we speak. It's a first for us, so please make sure that your little devices are off, but keep them on, because for each session there will be the opportunity for you to ask questions using one of those Twitter hashtags, using the BBS 2010, what did I say 2010? 2018 hashtag, and then we will collect these questions and pass them on to the individual moderators. And of course, at last, this is not quite the Oscars, but almost, I have to acknowledge an amazing crew that made this event possible, that it has made it possible for me to be somewhat relaxed this morning. It's my talented group of graduate students, postdocs, and colleagues and staff at the forum who have worked really incredibly hard to make this possible. You will recognize most of them by the very cool t-shirts that we're all wearing. And the graduate students are Simone Franzi, Ben Coleman, Devon Woodard, Luis Camacho, Hilary Yao, Jessica Agnew, and the postdoc is Marion Repetti. My colleagues Dan Simunza and Giselle Datz will be moderating the panels later this morning, and they really have been a huge support in shouldering the intellectual burden that went into the making of this event, because we wanted this event not to be a trivial hype event, but something slightly more reflective and deeply meaningful. I must, of course, also acknowledge the organizational genius of Christine Heyman and Marsha Donaldson, who made sure that all the event planning matters work like clockwork. In fact, my entire team has given me a sort of a glimpse of what great productivity in an interdisciplinary setting could be. And then I have to, and I'm sorry, the person that will be named will be perhaps slightly embarrassed, I have to acknowledge my sister, Anna Bieri Kennedy. I know she's in the audience. She's one of my most important sparring partners. She also is a faculty member here at Tech and runs a program that is called Science, Law and Technology. And as such, it's a program that actually sits squarely at the intersection of all intellectual property issues that are related and will be affected by the blockchain. And so she's been a huge help in many ways in how I think about this. But once again, a very warm welcome to all of you, and I'm really looking forward to an engaging series of conversations. And I now leave the podium to Charles Clancy to enlighten us with some pretty dazzling stuff. Thank you.